Washington State Office of Equity. It's a commitment of the Office of Equity to not only bring digital equity, but digital equality to ensure that young learners in the smallest cities in our state have the same equal footing as those in our most affluent neighborhoods. The Washington State Office of Equity, bridging the digital divide across the evergreen states.
Turn up your radio wherever you at. We about to bring it.
Street Beat with Tony B.
Tony B will give you a chance to tackle local, national, and international issues that affect your community.
Street Beat. Street Beat. Tony.
I'm Paul Pearson, host of StarTime. And back in my day, when we wanted to hear the radio, we had to stick a couple of coat hangers on Grandpa's head so his cavity fillings could pick up an AM station. But it's the 21st century now, so whenever I want to hear Rainier Avenue Radio.world, I listen to it on the brand new Rainier Avenue Radio app on my Android or iPhone. Download it for free at the Google Play Store or the iPhone App Store, the Rainier Avenue Radio.world app.
Hello, I'm Tony Young, and every week I will be your guide to the music of the Fab Four with my show, With the Beatles. John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr, those four lads from Liverpool. First airings are Tuesday night from 7 to 9 p.m. with repeats on Thursdays and Saturdays from 8 to 10 a.m. right here on Rainier Avenue Radio. Tune in to catch Beatlemania.
Hey renters, have you ever had a landlord do something that didn't seem legal? Have you ever wondered if you have any rights as a renter? Well, you do, but it's not always clear what they are. That's why Solid Grounds Tenant Services offers free online renters webinars 3 times a month. Just go to solid-ground.org/RAR to learn more. This is a free opportunity to learn more about your rights as a renter. Again, just go to solid-ground.org/RAR.
You know you can't get enough of Rainier Avenue Radio.
All right. Hello. This is Rainier Avenue Radio, coming to you live from Seattle's Columbia City Theater. I'm Sam Harris, housing economist and co-founder of SeeKing Change, a collective examining the homeless situation in the greater Seattle and King County region. Each week, we explore an issue at the heart of the problem to explore the root causes of homelessness and the consequences and strategies to combat the desperate moments that are at the root of much of our drug and criminal activities across our communities. Today, we're really fortunate to have Jim Fuda joining us. Jim is now the executive director for Crime Stoppers of Puget Sound and has positive results in building trusting relationships between the public, the police, and the media to create a safer community environment. Jim, it is great to have you here.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So I guess the big question is, how do you create a safer community environment and get the public and the police and the media to all be on the same page?
Well, it's actually surprisingly a kind of a simple process. Is that some people, for whatever reason, are afraid to call the police, fear of retribution from the bad guy. They may have a problem with the police themselves, criminally. And so what we do is the detectives for certain felony crimes get a hold of us, and then they give me a short synopsis, and I blast it out to my media contacts, and then we put that out to the public, where then if their tip leads to an arrest and a charge, we pay them a monetary incentive. So It works well.
Yeah. So the monetary incentive is an interesting concept. And I've you have lots of experience. This program started when I was a kid, right? This was back in the 80s.
Right.
Right. Crime Stoppers was a very powerful program, kind of, did it ever merge with DARE or?
Well, DARE was what first came out, and that was the let's face it, was kind of a failed drug program that they tried to educate kids in the elementary schools. So it did kind of emerge from that. But how this actually started here in the Seattle area was my old partner, Merle Carner, was a Seattle police robbery detective, and he was asked by then Chief Fitzsimons to start a program. And so he looked around, found this around the country, went to a convention there, and then we started it.
You started it here?
Yeah, he started it here, and then it was called Seattle King County Crime Stoppers, to where it's expanded now. Crime Stoppers of Puget Sound, and we're responsible for basically 4 counties, but we actually go up to the Canadian border. We have King, Snow, Island, Kitsap, and about 4.2 million people and 57 different police agencies.
Okay, how are you connected to all of the agencies?
Through they're aware of the Crime Stoppers programs, and in fact, that's how we're funded. Is we do a price per officer per department for those agencies that opt in, that actually pays the services of Crime Stoppers. So they come to us when they run out of their own investigative tips and ask for the public's help anonymously. The detective might have 80% of the case done, and that one piece of information comes in and ties it all in.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so do you have local stories to tell that where this was a dramatic help?
Well, several. In fact, I've got one going right now that I just aired on Fox 13 of a subject that's being looked for several crimes. He's wanted in 2 counties. He's carrying a gun. He's got several warrants, and we're just blasting it out. And Fox picked it up first, and we'll see which other station picks up with it. And then I do a bit. You're anonymous. Someone knows who did this. And we have another case where the family, we pay $1,000 for bank robberies and homicides. But oftentimes a family will come forward. And for example, a case in Kitsap County in Poulsbo, where a 25-year-old was bludgeoned to death in October. The family raised the reward by another $15,000. So there's $16,000 out there. And we're hoping that will turn allegiance, because, like I said, somebody knows who did these crimes, and hoping that we turn allegiance, because they do stay anonymous.
Yeah. That sounds pretty powerful. Do you ever have people that throw out false tips to try to get false arrests?
Of course, but these tips, we know which ones are bad tips, but then the detective is the one that tells us, yes, Jim, this is the tip that solved this crime, and this tipster needs to get paid off. So what we've done in November of 2017, we started using a tip app called P3 Tips, free download to your smartphone. Our tips quadrupled overnight, and our arrests more than doubled. Why? We're in the gaming generation. People don't trust the 1-800 numbers anymore. And I joke, I can't get my 17-year-old granddaughter to talk to me on the telephone, but she texts me back in 30 seconds. So it's a new form of communication. They trust it, and it's done wonders.
Yeah. What kind of tips do you prefer to have on there? Is this just for really important crimes? At what point do you call 911? At what point do you just use tips? Well,
if it's an in-progress crime, we always say call 911. That way, you want someone to come handle that call. Don't delay and call us to where we get a tip to the respective agency. But if it's follow-up information, or we know something about it, I've got one out now. We've got 30 tips on, where I hope you hear about the West Seattle one, where a girl was drug out of her Toyota and by 2 women in a Range Rover, and beat her. The car rolled down a hill and hit 3 parked cars, and we've solved it. We know who it is.
Wow.
Yeah, that was
Well,
just yesterday.
oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So it works. That's great. So building trust a little bit with the community. It feels well. My oldest was in most of the BLM protests, and you get a real perspective of the distrust the youth has in the police, and so building this trust with the community is an incredibly challenging problem. Do you have something to say to the youth? Right, I always try to get across the idea that there is this there's two different things happening on the ground when you call 911. There's the crisis that is the reason they're calling. But then there are these leading factors, right? The root cause of that. And it feels like the police don't have a lot of tools to necessarily address the crisis at the heart of the problem. They kind of just solve the solution right there. They solve the crime, but it's always kind of reactionary.
Yeah,
And
exactly. They're a triage. They handle the call, and hopefully, depending on what the type of incident is, they filter the incident or the people to some. Let's say it's a shooting. They handle the call, but then of course the victim goes off in an ambulance, so it's triaged to that part of it to somebody else. So it's the same kind of thing. And trust it has been cyclical, decades, different generations, and I'm hoping that we'll come back. And I think what's with the onset of putting the right culture in the right community to build the trust, to really, it's the old adage of the old beat cop. Technology got rid of a lot of that. In fact, years ago, the FBI went to Australia because Australia was the leader in community-oriented policing. And they pulled out a 1940s handbook, NYPD handbook. Get to know your crooks and your criminal in your area. If you haven't done your job unless you've shaken at least 5 businessmen's hands a day, and get back into the community and know who your crooks are, and the good people in there. People, if the trust is there, will talk to you. And I think we need to get back to that. And I think we're realizing that that's the case.
Yeah. I had a friend of mine is a lieutenant down in Maricopa County, where Phoenix is, and he said that most of his officers, most of the sheriffs, they can't afford to live in Maricopa County.
Right.
And I feel really fortunate that Seattle has put a lot of pressure to make sure that they're paying people enough so that they can live here in the community. And I think, we need to do the same with our teachers and everyone, but, you start where you can, and where there's willingness. And having that willingness in this industry is, I think, crucial to building that force that actually cares about the community.
A lot of people, it is a calling to want to do the public service side of things, whether it be a fireman, policeman, whatever it might be. But I was just asked, another news agency asked me to do a story that we're looking at in our state of hiring DACA people to hire on the police department and fire department. And I said,
DACA.
I think it's a great idea, where people that are undocumented, well, they're living here, basically they're documented, but living here, but are not citizens. And I actually think when I get you back to the point of knowing your community, being a trust in your community, where you know the customs, the language, that I don't see the issue of not. They should be doing it, and those people will be vetted more than any American citizen would, and it would help beef up police departments in the state.
Wow, integrating really asylum seekers. Well, it's funny because asylum seekers right now have such a hard time getting a job, getting that work visa.
Sure, and
work would be so satisfying for them. I'm sure that they would feel incredibly proud to take on such a privileged position.
And it gives them another pathway to citizenship. I mean, I think it's a win-win.
Yeah, yeah. Now, of course, SeeKing change is really trying to change the narrative about homelessness, and whether we like it or not, the police are an intricate part of homelessness response. Right. I actually talked to a police officer who was responding to 911 calls, and I asked him just a few questions, but I asked, how many of his 911 responses have at the root housing instability, and he just leaned back. He was like 100%. Like, whoa! I think he saw my jaw drop a little bit, and he said he thought he was exaggerating, but that's what it felt like. So, how do we take that and say, okay, we need trust in that moment when people experience that first critical moment of crisis, right? You, as a community member, and you see crisis, you see the consequence of crisis, and you call Crime Stoppers, right? You call 911. There's a response there for you. But when you see crisis, the prevention side, have you explored possibilities of expanding your circle? It includes so much that homeless people, people experiencing housing loss. Sorry, I have old language. Yeah, people experiencing housing loss are getting into these struggles, right? There's trafficking right here. The drugs are rampant, and it seems like it's all very connected. Yeah.
And so the idea is to get these services out of the silos, and because there's not a one size fits all approach to handling these people. Someone gets in crisis, they got a issue here, and I'm a firm believer, housing is not the issue. It's the underlying issues that create the housing loss. And they in these homeless camps, there is a hierarchy. Like you mentioned, the prostitution, the thefts. Go up to 12th and Jackson on 3:00 in the afternoon after they've all done their stealing and they're trading what they've stolen and shoplifted for fentanyl. So I think that once we can get that person and find out what that issue is, get them into the proper help that they need. Yeah, housing is one of it, but it's also they need drug counseling, whether they need rehab first, and we need to be these people's constant to make sure that and many will fall through the cracks. I've always said when I was a beat cop, I was 33 years with the sheriff's office. We always had mentally ill on the street. We always had the drug addict on the street, but a minuscule amount to what we have today. And what's been taken out of that is accountability. The court at Harborview. Oh, you don't want to go on your medication? Officer, take him to Western State. You'll be on your meds in 2 weeks. Oh, you don't want to go to rehab? Officer, take him to jail. You'll dry out by yourself, and that'll be really unpleasant. And it did cure a lot. Not that's not heartless to me. That is giving someone an option to do the right thing and to help themselves. And I truly believe that. And although it's how rampant it is now, is that we need to find those other solutions. I said, break down the silos and give the person they help at the time they need it the most.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that phrase. I've heard it several times in the last few months, but being someone's constant. I think that's, I feel when I speak with people who don't have housing on the street, and you feel this disconnected state where they feel the community has turned their back on them.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself can cause you to break from the community rules.
Sure.
What do I care about your rules if you don't care about my survival? And it feels like, especially with sweeps, there's this nature of removing a person without giving them a place to go.
Right.
Is well, I guess we used to call it exile. Right. But there's no more land. It's all claimed. Right. So there's no other country to drift to. You end up in, Portland or, down the street or 3 blocks away. Right. And that's what we keep running into is we're taking away the resources, the tents, the supplies that are given to them by these resource providers that we're paying for. And then the police come in and throw it all in the dumpster and make them start all over. Right. So, and then they all start to gather in these encampments. When we finally get tired of them, we remove them all. And within these encampments, you have all the social benefit of, a little bit more security, a little bit more communication, a little more community. But then you also have the opportunity for these organized groups to come in. And that's when you start getting these sex trafficking opportunities. And so what do we do to inform the community that, first of all, you exist, because I didn't know about you before I met you. and I want to make sure we pump you up and elevate you, because this seems like an amazing opportunity to make sure people are accountable for what they do, but more important, give the community access to the police and have a more fair conversation where people aren't as afraid to approach police. I mean, that's one of the big problems I have right now with our future generations, right? Our youth, they're going to be reluctant to give any tip, and they're going to be reluctant to believe that it's anonymous. How can we make sure that they're part of this? They're part of the community.
Yeah, we get our PSAs out as much as we can. I hit the media. I'm on at least one station 2 or 3 times a week, talking about actually even different topics. I mean, even the downsizing of the police department, that where there isn't enough services, where these guys are these officers are just responding to priority 1 calls, and these other ones that are building to a property crime, just a property crime, but are building to crime against person, and that's the bad part. You've got 2 or 3 Kias stolen. One they used to smash in a store. And there's 6 or 8 or 10 of them, and then they drive away in the other 2 that they've stolen, and then they're dumped. So you look at the property owner now, his insurance is gone. The people that own the cars, they're put out. Everybody gets bitter, and you see how the cycle. Oh, the cops aren't going to do anything. Well, the sad part about it is there isn't enough of them to go around anymore. They're trying to protect human life, rather than it being delineated to a property crime.
Right. Now, are the police that we see on the street, are they connected to you? Will they know how this works, or is this just something we should go and get the app and do it completely anonymously?
Yeah. The cops know about us. But we deal mostly with the detectives, because they're the ones that are investigating the after the fact crimes. But we also get from a lot of people crimes that may not be investigated. I know this is going to happen this day. It's kind of thing. We get some of those tips as well. We find they give us the location of where this is going to happen. So then we filter it down to that agency or one of the detectives that takes those tips, and then filters it down and hopefully to patrol, the patrol units out there.
Okay, great. Okay, that's that seems like a perfect little pathway to getting more accountability out there. Yeah, I love that.
Well, like I said, it takes a community, and this is one way for the community to get involved, remain anonymous, and not worry about their own safety.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I love that. Now you have a scope of your background is phenomenal, and I wonder if we could just explore that a little bit. You have international experience, 33 years as a detective, so much more going into these international. Well, you've created an international group to try and track down some of these more prolific sex trafficking operations. Now, this is one of those larger things in the media right now, especially with Jeff Epstein and everyone attached there. Is this just a couple of big groups, or is this a whole bunch of small groups that we're going to be tackling for a long, long time?
It's both. What happened is that I was never a detective. I went from patrol to special operations. I spent my last 15 years in special ops. I joke the big boys with toys. The SWAT team. I ran the negotiations team, and then when I retired, I went to work for the feds, and I was in Pakistan, Indonesia, and Bosnia. And when I lived in Bosnia, I built trusted relationships, and that's the problem with some of these developing countries is corruption. So when we came back and started using that tip app I mentioned in 2017, I thought, what better way to help fight transnational crimes, those crimes that have no borders and are corruption-based. So we picked 7: human trafficking, terrorism, illicit trade, arms dealing, drug smuggling, cybercrime, and bank fraud. I went back to Banja Luka, Bosnia, where I'd lived, met with my upper echelon guys that were trusted, that had been vetted by the U.S., had them bring 4 countries together and did one press release, and we had 47 tips in a week. So people want to talk, they're just afraid to. But we learned a couple of things. A local program can't sustain it, and that Bosnia was not the place to start. Bosniaks, Muslims, Croats, Catholics, Serbs, Orthodox, cultural, if one likes it, the other ones really don't. So we moved it to Serbia, took 2 years to find all those trusted people involved. Actually, February 2020, we had trusted upper echelon police officers here learning the operation side of things. 3 weeks later, COVID hit. So that fell apart for a while. We've gone back 4 times since, built it up. And in that meantime, Moldova came to us because all the influx of the refugees coming from Moldova has created a whole new level of corruption. They're a country of 3.2 million people, and they get all this influx in. And what these people are going through, the refugees, I went to a refugee intake center in Chisinau. It'll break your heart, living in a converted movie theater just to get by before they can go somewhere. And Bosnia, we're back in because I have a trusted guy there that's well connected. So I'll be going back again in September, getting these programs open and moving things forward.
Yeah, that is phenomenal. It's amazing to have somebody with your level of experience in a position like this, helping the Puget Sound area. And I for one, am incredibly appreciative. We have a lot of work to do, and building trust is at the tipping point. So beautiful. Well, thank you for being here today. We have a special street beat tonight on Crisis Corps' initiative at 7 p.m. with Susan McLaughlin of King County Health. And that is all the time we have today for Seeking Change. Thank you so much. I'm Sam Harris, and be safe out there.